Friday night. Hey, I didn't
You
tell you
know
this. I know we were talking before we started here, but I went out for a bike ride and I broke my quick link.
what? I've
Yeah,
never broke a quick.
it,
John, your power is so amazing. Was it
right.
like 700-800 watts you were pushing, or?
Well, I changed my chain after racing, and so I must
Oh,
not have
not
put the quick link on just right because it broke within 3/10 of a mile.
well.
So,
That's probably when you had the most power, though. Your watts per kilogram must have been like 9 or 10.
so I had to walk back, and the pin of the one quick link actually got bent,
Broke off.
and so I just must not have put it on tight enough. So, but so I
Oh.
ordered some more quick links too because I didn't have another one in my. I took it out of my bag to replace my old quick link, so I've ordered more.
So the biggest overpriced scam in all of biking is a quick link.
Yeah, right.
$11
Oh yeah,
for something that costs what, 2 pennies, 2 cents to make.
but if it fails,
Oh, I know. Like
sure.
I understand that, but when we had the 10-speed quick links,
Yeah,
they were cheap.
yeah.
I remember buying like five for like $5.
Right.
And then as soon as 11 speed came out, it was like you get one for like $11.
Yeah.
I'm like, what's going on here? Oh, I see. The early adopters into 11 speed, we're going to get fleeced.
Yeah.
And now the 12 speed ones are the same. They're like $11, $12.
No.
Ridiculous. So that's my rant. Hey,
Yeah.
we could tell it's Friday night. I got my Athletic Brewing
Nice.
beer going. So if I
Very
start
good.
slurring my speech, you know why. Uh,
Hey, if there's any athletic brewing people out there, sponsor us.
exactly. And all I need is like maybe a 6-pack a week.
Right.
And pretty much every Friday night I have one.
Oh,
Like
that's good.
that's and because they're when they're not a sponsor of us, I can only afford one a week.
Okay, there you
But
go.
if they were a sponsor and they gave me a 6-pack a week,
Yeah,
then I would have one every night.
there you go. Well,
There.
and I hope everyone knows that the athletic brewing is the non-alcoholic one, and they actually taste pretty good. So I've got my soda water, so that's my
Because you're not sponsored.
what's that?
Because you're not sponsored.
Soda Stream, they should be sponsoring us too.
No, but if you're sponsored by Athletic Brewing, you'd have an Athletic Brew right now, right?
Oh, I would, yes.
See, there we go.
Oh,
Hey, John, it was so fun to be out at the race last week and see you out there. Congratulations, by the way.
yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Once again, all John does is like collect podiums and
Oh,
t-shirts.
well, no, I missed the overall, but it was
But you get the age group, right?
Yeah.
So, but still amazing. Once again, and you did the long distance. What they call it?
I think
The
they
beast.
called it the long course. Yeah.
Well, I think they called it the Beast or something like that.
Oh, really? Okay. I missed
So-
that. But and on one hand, I wanted to use that race as a good. This sounds terrible, but I wanted to do a good training day because I shooting for Tempe 70.3. But I also wanted to support our local race company, BBSC, to offer that long distance. Because if no one signs up for it, they won't offer it. And I know that they canceled it in previous years because they didn't have enough people. So I wanted to, show that support. And if I did either the sprint or the Olympic, I was going to go for a ride afterwards anyhow. So I'm like, well, I might as well just sign up for this and do it. So it was good. Tough course, obviously.
It's a super tough course. The nice thing was it was a nice day. It
Oh,
wasn't the
cloud
cloud
cover.
cover.
Yeah.
It was a little windy, but not like as bad as we thought.
Yeah,
It was going to
no.
be enough that actually probably you didn't overheat.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is pretty rare for that race. A lot of times
I
it gets
know.
really hot in that
I
race.
know, and the sun beats down on you and you're really baking. But the part, and I know you and I talked about this, the part that I missed was hanging out with everyone. Usually I like to do the sprint or maybe the Olympic, and then you're with everyone and exchanging stories and all that. And I didn't have any of that. So
Yeah, it was fun. Like I didn't race because I'm still recovering, but it was just fun, like hanging out with people before the race and after the race.
mhm.
It was. I feel like that was in the local races are really just for me like building community.
Yeah, right.
Building the triathlon community, but just building the community in general.
Mhm.
And I always try and make it a point to meet new people at a race. Like
Yeah.
to butt into somebody's conversation and introduce myself.
Yeah.
And I met a lot of new people
That's great.
at that race. And so, and I think that's a good opportunity at a local race that maybe you don't always get at a large race,
Mhm.
because yeah, you're going to meet somebody, but you may never see them again.
Right.
The local races, you meet them, you might see them at the next local race,
Mhm,
and then you
mhm.
can start, you build community, you build relationships. So that was pretty fun.
No, that's neat. And, that's, and I should say that I was really fortunate that, the UNLV Tri Club did wait around for me and saw me at the finish. So that was really nice to see, those friendly
Yeah.
faces. And how cool is it to see our UNLV Tri Club, take off? And that really was not really their first race, but it really was their first race that they were saying they're a club and they're
Yeah.
actually starting to do races now.
Yeah, it was super fun. And, I know both of us, are obviously really involved in the UNLV Triathlon Club. And honestly, it's been so much fun to help them get going. And we're going to have them on in a future episode, maybe sooner, maybe rather than later, we'll have them on and talk about the journey that they've been on to start the club. And I want to also reach out to people that are listening and let them know that, they set up a GoFundMe. It's on our Facebook page, the Triathlon Club's Facebook page. Please support them. I know that they're already racking in some good support already.
Yeah.
And we've had people donate bikes already and other equipment. And so once again, you understand that this is brand new. Like, this is the first year we've had a triathlon club at UNLV, and they need a lot of stuff. So
well, and if people aren't in a position to support financially, we're always looking for mentors or people that will help guide some of these young athletes that most of them are going to be brand new to the sport.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Contributing that way is very meaningful.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
Okay. So this is actually a good, we're talking about the local race and a good transition to kind of our topic for tonight. And we bandied this about a little bit earlier, and it's exactly what we're going to do. But what we're going to do is talk about using races, like smaller races or different types of races, to help with your big race.
Mhm.
And one of the issues that that I like with doing local races, not issues, things that like doing local races or even doing Zwift races or online races, is it gives you a chance to kind of practice.
Mhm.
And I mean, practice the skill of triathlon in one way, but practice the mental side of triathlon. So, the bigger the race, the more the anxiety,
Mhm.
right? The more the stress. And by doing more smaller races and or Zwift races or local 5Ks or a local time trial or something like that, if it's available, that is not like life or death for you.
Right.
The more times I think you get on a start line, the easier it is, even in the bigger races. Like, you've been there before many times. And so we're going to kind of go down that road and talk about, how you or I view those races. Even maybe if you know some of the literature on this, John, as far as anxiety and blood pressure and safety and those kind of things as well. So that's kind of the topic for tonight.
I love it. And race ready week. So how do you get ready for your race? How do you get ready for that? Put your toe on that start line, and what's going through your mind, and how do you put yourself in that position to have the best event possible for that day? And there's a lot of little things that we can do and some big things. And I really like, you actually started the idea of getting this topic by talking about racing in Zwift.
Yeah.
And but before we go there, one of my race ready tips is I have my triathlon go bag ready. It's already packed. I'm ready to go. So I got and you've got your crate packed.
Yep.
With your triathlon gear. So if we said, hey, we've got a race this weekend that we got to go do, I've got a backpack full of all my stuff ready to go.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that is that not everyone can do it, because a lot of people, they train in their race stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and I get that. Like, you got one helmet, for example. Like, you and I, we both have, we have a race helmet and we have a training helmet. And you and I also, we both have like a race bike and a road bike that maybe we're, So some people might only have one bike, but yeah, absolutely. But I think the only thing about race readiness, once again, it needs to start a long time before,
Yeah.
right? People talk about race ready and they think of like the day before or the week before.
Mm-hmm.
I think you should be starting to think about it months before.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so John, like if you were to say this year, what was your A race or is going to be your A race? Do you have one?
It probably is coming up with Tempe and then Indian Wells as was my A race before, but then I switched into Tempe at some point. And I'm using that to try to get ready, hopefully to qualify for New Zealand. I guess the A race would have been Lottie, but that
yeah, exactly. So assuming, yeah, exactly. We didn't do Lottie, but you're probably right. Like you're thinking about a qualifying, like that's a big thing, right? To actually get a qualifying spot. And you've already alluded to it. Like this race you did last weekend was to help prepare you.
Right.
The race you did 2 weeks ago, or is it 3 weeks ago now, in Utah also helped. Like the purpose of that race was not to go and win that race.
Right.
Like, yeah, you did, and that's great. But the bigger picture was like, it's going to help you in the long run.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that I think is interesting about like having prep races and thinking about the long-term goal here is it's really actually hard to push yourself to your limit on your own.
On your own in training. That's
in training. Even if your coach writes down, hey, like you're going to go 100%, or this is a test today. They're not going to give you well, maybe they will. Like the people I coach, I don't. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to swim 750 as fast as you can. You're going to have the quickest transition you can. You're going to get on your bike and you're going to ride for 12 and a half miles.
Right.
You're going to get off that as quickly as you can and then run 5K as fast as you can.
Yeah.
Nobody prescribes that. Right. But you can sign up for a race and you do that exact thing. And it's such a good prep for even a longer distance race. Just to do that, to get on the start line and go through all of the steps, because the steps are basically the same.
Yeah. Right.
Even packing your bag, like, I know you got your go bag, but packing your stuff and realizing which gear works, which gear doesn't work. You kind of iron out all of the little problems along the way. So I think that sometimes people don't do the local races and don't do smaller things because they've got this one goal. I'm going to do this 170.3. Yeah. And that's my goal. And even if they do the local races, they don't think of them as training races. Right. Like they're not actively learning off of those races. But I think you and I, like, we pay attention and we try and learn off of those races.
I love this because you're spot on. I mean, if you're going to be race ready, it's not just about fitness. It's not just about your training program. It's all the logistics that go to getting to that start line. What time do you leave? What do you eat for breakfast? All these little decisions that ultimately influence your race day. And sometimes you have to sign up for an event to flush out what those little things are. And, what do you think about how do you feel during the race week? I look at my wife, Laura, and I, when we go to a race, we actually approach race week very differently. And we've come to learn that, okay, I need to do this, she needs to do that. And as long as we do that, we're doing the best thing we can for each of our races. The problems come in when I try to do what she wants and she tries to do how I want to do it. That doesn't work. It's very individual, but you only can discover that by going and doing some other events.
No, you're absolutely right. And even like a race week, John, for think about like the week before the race you just did. That was, you were thinking about the race during that week, right?
Yeah.
You were already going through the planning, even though it was a local race.
Right.
Because I know you're trying to emulate what you're going to do in Tempe and emulate what you're going to do, later on down in Palm Springs. Yeah. Right. And that's what you should be doing with these local races is, I always treat them the same. Like a local race, I treat it the same as going to a 70.3 World Championship, to be honest with you. Like my prep that week, I try and do the same stuff So then I know, once again, I know what works
Yeah.
and what doesn't work.
Mhm.
And also mentally, like, I personally have a lot of racing. I used to, I don't know, I think it's a little bit better, honestly, have a lot of race anxiety around the bigger races,
Yeah, right.
especially when I was very fit.
Mhm.
Like when I'm really fit and I know that, yeah, I can get on the podium here, like I have a lot of race anxiety. And for me, honestly, doing a bunch of races helped get rid of that.
Mhm.
The more races I did, the less I felt that anxiety.
Or
And
the more that you were able to manage it.
manage it, exactly,
And then
manage
it
it.
doesn't work against you. I mean, it's good to have some anxiety, but
Yeah.
when that anxiety decreases performance, that's the worrisome. But I think that you do practice that. I mean, I still get nervous before races. So even as we're going to this race, I was still going through that mindset of, okay, it's okay to be anxious, but
Yeah.
now I want to turn that into a positive as opposed to a distractor from the event.
Yeah. So John, I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you were younger, you used to do like a 5K every week.
Yeah, so one of the things, and again, this, maybe remember this when you said, you do the Zwift racing. Back when I was living in New York in my first phase of triathlon, what was great is I was part of the Long Island running club, and they had a weekly 5K, and also I also would jump down to Manhattan and do some of the New York Roadrunner 5Ks as well. And what was so cool is I did a series of them, one 5K every week. And what I decided to do was to just try different pacing strategies at each race. So sometimes I'd go with the idea that I was going to go out fast and then try to hold on. And then the next week I would go out and say, okay, I'm going to even pace this. And I'd have to really monitor in the beginning to make sure I'm not going out fast. And I'm just going to do this pace for each mile. Of course, we didn't have GPS watches back then, so it was a little more difficult to do that. And then I'd try another, start off slow and go fast. And, it was really neat to be able to try different strategies without really worrying about the place. I couldn't tell you any places that I finished in, and they didn't do age group awards, nothing. And it was just a group of people, and we're from 20 to 50 people probably. And that was that, enough motivation to try to continue to, race hard, but trying, also having the ability to just try something different. And I think that ability actually stuck with me from there on, is that I've been able to race 5Ks, even though my speed is gone, I can still comfortably and confidently do a 5K.
Yeah, and I think also, John, it probably has built something in you as well to know how hard you can push yourself, even
Yeah.
still, right? Even though the pace isn't the same, your heart and lungs are still working at basically as hard as they can, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can, because you have had so many of those experiences where, and I'll take it all the way back to when you're a kid. And it's the same for me when I was a kid, and I was running when I was a kid. Is like, you went through those experiences and you went through them a lot.
Right.
Now I know that we both had a hiatus of our athletic career in our mid years.
Yeah.
But it was the same, like when I started into triathlon in Las Vegas, the Las Vegas Track Club was in existence.
Mm-hmm.
And they used to have, I think it was like 2 times a month they had a race.
Yeah.
And I think it was $5, and it was 5Ks, and it was just all over. Sometimes there were 6Ks. They did the bristle cone, and so they did some longer ones as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I did as many of those as I could. And I learned so much about, once again, pacing, but also like how to push yourself. I can still remember one race. It was actually down near where you live, Pittman Wash.
Okay. Yeah.
This guy came in and passed me with a stroller, pushing a stroller. And I'm like, man, I can't let this guy pass me. And I pushed even harder than I thought I could. Right. I got out of that comfort. Right? It was not comfortable, but I got even to that next level.
Yeah.
He still beat me. Don't get me wrong. Him and his little kid beat me.
Yeah.
But I can still remember that point. Like, you actually have more.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I learned through those races that actually being uncomfortable is okay.
Yeah. Right.
it's kind of funny, John. One of the things you said to me a long time ago is like, you can always see me in a race because I always have a scowl. Like I'm really like, I'm working hard. Like I'm not comfortable.
Right, right,
Like, I'm okay not being comfortable.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think like by racing a lot, it actually taught me
Mm-hmm.
or teach, you know, that you actually, when you're racing, you don't have to be comfortable.
Right, right.
Right. Like a lot of times, especially in like 70.3 racing in a run, I'm a little bit miserable, to be honest with you.
Right. No,
I'm enjoying it though. Like
yeah.
I'm miserable, but I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the misery because I'm like pushing myself to kind of like the next level.
Mm-hmm. Well, and what I think is important is what you said, that you are able to find those different thresholds to go through that you can still sustain a pace.
Yeah.
And I think far too often enough people don't explore those faster paces, during training or what have you. And it really only happens during an event. And sometimes that is an opportunity to figure out where that red line is. Can I sustain this pace for 10 minutes, for 20 minutes or 30 minutes? And, sometimes you got to take the chance and you got to see, what you can do. Just like, I was trying different pacing strategies. Go out fast and see how long you can hold on for. Go out slow and then build. And then you're running as fast as you can near the end of the race. And that was just neat to be able to explore those different strategies. And, like you, it's a matter of almost training the brain that it's okay to go certain speeds.
Yeah. And the other thing is, in the smaller races for you and me as well, I think we both accepted it's okay to fail.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like it's okay to fail in any race, but it's okay to try something new and fail.
Yeah.
Right? Because at least you tried something different.
Right.
Because you were trying to become better.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same like for in training, like let's say I'm going to do 2 by 20 minutes, like
Mm-hmm.
as hard as I not as hard as I can, but like at just above FTP, so
Yeah.
pretty hard, right? Well, there's going to be some times when I don't make it,
Mm-hmm.
like on that second one especially, and
Yeah.
that's okay, right? Because once again I'm learning myself, I'm learning where I am, I'm learning my limits, and I think oftentimes in society today, like failure is looked upon as such a negative.
Yeah. Right.
But failure is what allows us to become better.
Mm-hmm.
And the only, and once again, you can learn that in like practice races.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, because I mean, and maybe no race would really matter that much to you, but like a qualifying race is not the race that you want to fail at.
Right.
Right. But it doesn't matter if you failed last weekend, if you were working on something that's going to help you in 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what's funny is, speaking of these faster paces, I was getting, teased a little bit ahead of time for doing sprint triathlons, and I try to tell people all the time, sprint triathlons are almost harder than some longer races because you are trying to push near that point where you could fail at any time, and you're trying to find that point where you can still hold that pace. But if you go any faster, you're probably going to crash and burn. And that's a lot of fun to do that. And it's also hard. It takes that mental acuity to try to be at that level. And you can't always do it. So
well, you're trying to be at threshold for an hour.
Yeah.
Or just over an hour, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's interesting that you said that some people tease you for it. I commend you for it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I actually think that's amazing. Like, if you think about it, would someone tease you if you said, hey, I'm going to go do the state time trial championship, it's a 40K and it's 1 hour at threshold.
Yeah.
Oh no, like, wow, way to go. But it's a triathlon and you did a short one and it was an hour. Once again, that's one of my biggest pet peeves. Like, I encourage all the people that I train to do sprint racing,
Mm-hmm.
to run 5Ks, to do these things, because once again, being at threshold or above threshold is hard.
Yeah, right.
Right.
And doing the longer stuff, you're below that pace, and now you've still got to find what that pace is that you can sustain over a longer period of time. And so it is, but
it's still a threshold though, right? It's just a different threshold.
Right.
Like in a 70.3 for you, what's your 5-hour threshold?
Yeah, right.
Right? Like, that's a hard number to find.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So yeah, what's your 5 hour heart rate threshold?
Yeah.
All I can do is look at a 70.3 and make that's about there,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
right? So no, I really think that's super cool. And my experience, and we talked a little bit about the Zwift racing, and one of the things that I really got into in the last over COVID really was joining a Zwift racing league and joining a team.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I'm still on a team. I'm on hiatus right now, but I keep in touch with my team. And it's amazing when you're on a team
Mm-hmm.
and you're getting points for a team,
Yeah.
the next level of threshold.
Yeah.
My hardest or highest heart rates ever have been on racing for a Zwift racing team.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen a 181
Mm.
except for then.
Yeah, right.
Because they're cheering, like I'm on Discord and I'm
Yeah.
hearing it in my ear. They're cheering for me.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm racing against all these people from all over the world. I'm not looking at my heart rate at that time. I'm literally looking on the screen, watching someone come up from behind me. And I'm like, I got to go just a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper.
That's great.
And if I'd signed up for the race by myself, it'd be so easy just to say, man, let that guy go. Because like it's Zwift. No one looks at no one's looking at the results. But when my team, they look at the results.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh my gosh, you are 4.3 watts per kilogram for 20 minutes. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And
right.
they're talking about it on the Discord.
Yeah.
Right? If not, it would just be another training ride.
Mm-hmm.
And that extra external motivation for me is enough to get me to work even harder on those hard sessions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I like once again, the people I coach, I try and encourage them to do Zwift racing. Some don't like it, and that's fine. They don't have to. But if that motivates you to go a little bit harder, I mean, I think it's great. If you can.
Oh, that's great. Now, how often do you do the Zwift racing? Is it
So the Zwift Racing League, or the ZRL, which is like the I don't know, it's kind of like the highest league of Zwift.
Mm-hmm.
Within that league, there's different, like there's A, B, C's, and D's. It's 4 seasons per year, and the season lasts between 6 and 8 weeks.
Okay.
They don't do it in the summer because
Mhm.
I think because everyone in the northern hemisphere is like riding outside. So they're in season 1 of the year right now, and then the end of the season is like April.
Mm-hmm.
So, but they do little blocks
Mm-hmm.
of the season. So it's actually every week. So the Zwift Racing League is Tuesday nights.
Okay.
So it's like every Tuesday night for either 6 or 8 weeks in a row.
Mm.
And it's a mix of open races and then team time trials. And the
Okay.
team time trials, oh my gosh, it's like the best workout you could ever do.
Right.
You work so hard because you don't want to let people down.
Yeah, right, right. Mm-hmm.
And
True.
and these people I've never met
Mm-hmm.
in real life. I've talked to them on Discord, but I've never met them.
Right.
And the cool thing is for me, because I was racing every week, is when the gun goes off, the anxiety is not there.
Yeah, right, right.
Like I'm still nervous, like maybe 20 minutes before, we're a little nervous, but it goes 10 seconds. I'm like, okay, I'm good. Like I know exactly how this is gonna feel. It's gonna feel horrible. That's okay.
Yeah.
But I've noticed that even into my 70.3 racing or the other triathlon, I'm not nervous on the start line anymore.
Right, right.
Because every week I'm on a start line.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I actually care a lot about that because once again, it's this team.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like, once again, it's not for everybody, but it is a thing that you could do. And anyone can join the Zwift Racing League.
That's what I was just going to say. So there's all different levels, and the level, the D level is for mostly beginners, or
Yeah, well, it's 1 watt per kilogram to 1.5 watts per kilogram
Oh, okay.
is like about your FTP.
Mhm.
So it's pretty. I mean, that's pretty low,
Yeah.
right? The D group, and then the C group's I think goes up to 2.5 watts per kilogram.
Mhm.
The B group goes up to 4 watts per kilogram, and then the A is above 4 watts per kilogram,
Mhm.
and that's getting pretty serious.
Right.
Like I was in the A group for a while. I got demoted
Mhm.
last year to the B group, which is fine because I would crush myself and finish like and people like the races are there's lots of races that happen at the same time, but there's like usually about 80 people in a race.
Right, right.
In the A group, if I could get in the top 30, I was like,
That's good. Yeah.
I was so happy to get in the top 30. In the B group, it's like, okay, like I gotta get in the top 10,
Mm,
you know, but yeah, but it's funny. I can never win
yeah, right, right.
because these guys have these unbelievable sprints.
Mhm.
It almost always comes down to a sprint. And John, no offense to anybody, but I can't do 14 watts per kilogram for 10 seconds. I just can't.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah, yeah, because I'm 80 kilograms, so that's 800, 1200 watts. So
1,200 watts.
yeah, that's a lot.
And that's to win the B group.
Mhm.
Yeah. So sometimes I'll do like a hill climb and I'll be okay. Like if it's really a hill climbing course, a hill course, like that's when I can get like in the top, like maybe even like 3 or 4. But if it's a typical race, and then that's fine. Like, cause we're a team, right? And everyone's got their role. Like we have a sprinter and we do lead outs for the sprinter and
Mhm.
yeah. So it's,
Well, I love it because it goes back to this idea of what we're talking about, where you need to figure out what your range is in terms of intensities that you can sustain and how long you can maintain that intensity. So I think the only way to figure that out is to do it. You know, there's a lot of great prediction equations. And one of the classes I'm teaching right now, we're going through different prediction equations, but they're just that, they're predictions, and they're based upon something that is not a race performance. And so the best predictor of performance is to actually do it, and then use those as markers for predicting other performances. So I love this idea of doing that. And you know, people aren't, if they don't want to go into the Zwift racing, there's other avenues, you know, just trying different paces for swimming and for biking and for running, you know, when you're out there in your training program.
yeah. And like, how do you know what you can do unless you've done it? Right.
Right.
Like, for example, let's say you're going to do a sprint triathlon and it's 750. Well, how many people will go swim in the pool 750 as hard as they can
Mm-hmm.
and see what they can actually do?
Right.
Right. I don't know too many people that do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, or even a 1.2, right? Like for you getting ready for a 70.3. Do you really know like what your pool 1200 time is?
Yeah, right.
You know?
And what's funny is and this goes back to where we started. I don't do as much of that type of intensity training in my normal workouts. That's what I use some races for.
Exactly.
To get that stimulus, and because I enjoy, you know, being around other people and racing with other people. My regular training program, I'm trying to train as hard as I can so I can still train tomorrow. And so I try to really watch not getting too hard in my training. And this is something we talked about in a previous episode, is the mistake a lot of people make is that they dive into that intensity and then they have to take a couple of days off. And I don't think that's what we're talking about. We're talking about exploring different paces, but not in a way that destroys your training program.
Well, and Zwift is notorious, and was notorious during COVID too, for people racing 5-6 times a week.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Like I was doing once a week.
Yeah, right.
And then the rest of the week, once again, is like the long, slow, zone 1, zone 2. But so I was trying to do a polarized approach and using the Zwift racing as that piece of that polarized approach. And I could always ride or run the next day, even like when I was doing it regularly. The races are about 40 minutes long. And they're stochastic in nature, right? It's like up and down, up a hill, down a hill. So yeah, when I finish, I'm destroyed. I recover really quickly.
Right.
And but yeah, I couldn't imagine some of these people doing it 4 or 5 times a week or 5 or 6 races a week. Some people doing multiple races in the same day.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, okay, maybe it's fun, but
short term,
it's short. That's short term. And the thing is also like in Zwift, you're often, and in real life, like in real life racing, you're racing against other younger people sometimes, right? Like if I'm doing a race against someone that's 25, well, yeah, they recover way quicker. And you know, maybe that person can race now 4 or 5 times a week, but I can't.
Right. No.
It's not sustainable.
Well, that's one of my items on here on our race ready tips. I've got weekly time trial, the weekly 5K, the triathlon go bag, and then my very next one is stay injury free. And if you're racing that frequently, that's not easy. And frankly, I don't think I could do a weekly 5K nowadays and without running a risk of getting injured. Back when I was young and, you're immortal, now, okay, that was all right. So maybe it would be every other week or something like that you're able to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're right. Maybe it would be every other week. Or, what we should do, John? Man, we should do. Here's my idea for us.
Okay.
We're gonna make a lot of money doing this.
Okay.
We're gonna have an old person 5K race.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna do it uphill.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Well, 'cause then you work your heart and lungs, but the chance of injury running uphill is so
relax.
much smaller.
Yeah, right.
Right. So we'll call it the old guy Billy Goat 5K.
I like it. Let's just go down to Lake Mead and run up the hill.
Exactly. Yeah, but maybe we gotta find somewhere it's like long enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, but or we could go up the Pumpkin Man course, right? Just run from the lake all the way to Boulder City.
Yeah.
Right. It's not going to be fast, but us old guys, we don't care about the speed, right? We want a good workout and we want to race each other and we don't want to get hurt.
Yeah. Right.
There we go. There's our new idea, the old guy Billy Goat 5K.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. And when you're injury free and you're on the start line, you're giving yourself a great chance to have a great day. If you're dealing with some injury or you just got off recovering from an injury, or maybe you're soon to be injured, then that's not going to necessarily be a great day. And so I think people really have to work hard at being healthy, and it's not as easy to do that.
And invariably you're going to get injured.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
You are, but learn from it.
Yeah.
Right. So you do a great job of keeping track of all of your workouts.
Mm-hmm.
And I assume when you do get a little injury, you look back and you're like, where did I make a mistake?
Mm-hmm.
Where was it too much intensity? Where was it too much volume?
Mm-hmm.
And I know you're very analytical. I'm sure you're figuring out, okay, don't do that again. Let's make sure we don't, we don't do that again, because then you can't train the next day.
You gotta learn from your mistakes, and we all make them. And when you look at the statistics of overuse injuries in running, especially, I mean it's high. And depending on how you define an injury, if you take someone, they're training for a marathon, I think it could be, if you take 100 people, it could be anywhere from 25 to 75 people are going to have an injury, and of those, you're probably going to have 25 of them that have to stop running because of the injury. So some of the other injuries you could still sort of tolerate, but you're compromising your ability to have a good event. And so it's it's a sport that has a high rate of overuse injuries. And triathlon, most of the injuries are related to the running aspect of the sport.
Yeah, and I think in triathlon, I mean, this is switching gears a little bit. I think that once again we get too caught up in what others are doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When I was racing my best,
mm-hmm.
I was probably only running 25 miles a week.
Right.
And that's all I needed to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And every time I pushed it
mm-hmm.
to 40, I'd get hurt.
Right.
Even if I was really careful about going from 25 to 40, and I did it over
mm-hmm.
weeks or months to
mm-hmm.
raise that up.
Mm-hmm.
Every single time I would be in the high 30s, I would pick up an injury.
Yeah.
So, okay, don't do that anymore, because when you're racing great, you're running 25 to 30 miles a week.
Yeah.
So why do I have this in my mind? And then the problem is, and we were talking about this off air. Well, so-and-so is doing this pro triathlete. They're running 60 miles a week.
Right.
Well, I'm not that. And
mm-hmm.
I know me now, I can't sustain that.
Mm-hmm.
Even if I'm feeling great running 25 to 30 miles a week,
right.
I should just leave it alone.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Why push it? And this is the notorious thing, especially in Ironman training,
right.
is this. And we've never really swear on this, so I'm just saying BS. The BS of saying that you need to do a 22-mile marathon or run to help you train for an Ironman. I don't think that's true.
Mm-hmm.
The 22-mile run on the weekend is probably setting you up for failure.
Well, and it
injury.
Back to how you do the marathon segment to begin with, and a lot of people will include including myself, will include walking in that marathon, and yet you're not training for that way that you're actually approaching it. And see, I love this idea that you're talking about, you're good in this range of mileage per week. Well, the whole idea of being successful and being injury free is finding that minimum effective dose.
Yep.
What is and not, I mean, we enjoy training. You and I both enjoy the long training days. That's not what we're saying, but trying to find what is that minimum dose that you need to be able to be successful, and it's different for swimming as it is for biking and as it is for running, but trying to find what that is. Sometimes it's a lot lower than people actually think.
I've successfully raced an Ironman with 25 hours a week, or 25 miles a week. I have also coached people that have successfully done that with 25 to 30 miles a week, and where they actually never had a run over 17 miles.
Yeah, great.
But they were doing like a 100-mile bike the day before.
Yeah, right.
And same thing, like we often get caught up in the triathlon world of looking what marathoners do. Like, oh, these marathoners are running 100 miles a week.
Right.
Well, I should be able to do 50. Yeah, you should, but they're not riding 200 miles a week.
Yeah.
They're not swimming 12,000 yards a week. They're not doing strength training. Well, they might be doing strength training, but they're not doing what you're doing. And once again, we're trying to get from our start line to our finish line as effectively as we can.
Yeah. And
in my opinion, as an age grouper, especially an older age grouper, you're right. It's the minimum effective dose.
Yeah.
Like if my longest run preparing for an Ironman is 17 miles, that is what it is. Because once again, you're not running it at the same pace you'd run a marathon, like a true marathon.
Right.
Like, and if I was training you for a full marathon, just a marathon where you went in fresh, it would be completely different.
Yeah. Right. A marathon, an outright marathon is totally different than an Ironman marathon. They're just not the same. And
so why do we insist on training it the same? Like, or we don't, but a lot of people in triathlon do. And I've listened to podcasts and read stuff. To do an Ironman, you have to do a 22-mile run 3 weeks out.
Right.
I don't believe that. Now, to win Kona, maybe you do. Right. Like, but that's not what most of us are trying to do.
That's right. And they're, the people who are doing that, their body types are a little different than my body type or your body type or other people's body type. I mean, there's people that can tolerate that high mileage, but not everybody can. And the stats show that most people cannot tolerate a high volume of running, especially.
And I love the fact you said that, because this is also different. If you are one of those people that is completely resilient and you never get hurt, no matter what you do, like, congratulations, you're a professional athlete, probably, or had been a professional athlete, because we've dabbled around this area. There are genetic things that happen, especially with the synthesis of collagen in the tendons and in the muscles. Right. And some people do it better than others. And if you're one of those people that happens to have those genetic anomalies and you can do anything and you never get hurt, okay, fine, go. Like do more. But the majority of people aren't like that, because the research shows, right? Like, what's the injury rate for runners now? Like the latest stuff per year, it's something like 60%. Of runners.
It comes down to a little bit how you define injury, but it is.
They'll miss like, I think that one was like a week of training.
Yeah, and the injury stats they're pretty high, and which means a lot of people are doing things that are dangerous to them, and trying to find a way to make this a lifestyle, play the long game, and be involved with the sport for a long period of time. It takes patience and maturity in terms of an athlete.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, I've got a few more on my
list. Go ahead, let's hit them.
All right, so now I'm going to move off sort of training. Yep. And we're already started on this one, but I'll bring it up again. Keep your equipment up to snuff, if you will. Check your gear to be race ready. You've got to be looking at your gear all the time. Look at your shoes. Are they getting worn down in a particular wear pattern? When is it time to replace them? how many pairs of shoes are you running in to begin with? Are your race shoes, do you wear race shoes? You know, are those ready? Obviously my bike and my chain, you know, that was not race ready. But you know, is your bike clean? Are you keeping it clean? Are you keeping it ready to go? Is your, you know, do you have all the gear that you need to do a race? So I think that, you know, is a good way to, you know, when maybe you're in a low volume week or something, to just make sure that you're checking your equipment thoroughly, and then even regularly, just, you know, be looking at your shoes, looking at your goggles. Do you need to replace your goggles, what have you? So just stay on top of your equipment.
Yep. No, I couldn't agree more. And it's not just your bike.
All right.
Like it's everything. It's, you know, how many times, John, have you been to a race and you see somebody with a torn wetsuit
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah.
and they're surprised?
They
Like,
were, yeah.
like I'll be like in transition, a guy will put on his wetsuit and they're like, oh,
Yeah, right.
that's not being race ready, right? That's
Yeah.
like, you know, and then they're like, well, who's got some tape? Who's got like, I'm
Yeah.
like, dude, you're stuck.
Yeah.
Like, there's not much you can do,
Yeah.
you know, but once again, it's like, I don't know about you, but I always swim in my wetsuit the week of a race, like even in the pool. And that's one thing is I look for, do I have any little tears? Do I have a cut? Because even a little tear, once you know, maybe race morning, you pull, and
Yep.
it's actually better to fix those little
Yep.
tears. And I know you probably are like me, you've got wetsuit cement in your garage, and I get a little tear, I just put a little dab of wetsuit cement,
Yeah.
it's fixed, right?
Mhm.
So you're right, like your equipment, it matters. Like, you know, even things like your helmet, like looking over your race helmet, and does your snap work? Does, like, you know,
Mhm.
is it adjusted properly?
Yep.
Not something you want to be doing in the morning of a race at the transition, or when you get, heaven forbid, when you get on your bike
Yeah,
in
right.
T2. Yeah.
And a lot of times I'll, you know, after a race, I find it's very important to make sure that I prep my gear for the next time. So you mentioned the helmet, you know, I take the visor off, I clean the visor, I make sure that the straps are still good at that point and still in the, you know, same place, because that they didn't get adjusted. You know, I go through the gear after a race as well as I as I pack it up to go forward. And then,
So
you
I
know,
get a,
you mentioned the wetsuit. I like having a practice wetsuit and then the race wet. I like what you do as well, where you wear it the week before, because if you take it off after a race and you don't ever wear it again until the next race morning, you don't know if something happened to your wetsuit while you were taking it off, or maybe got kicked or dragged by someone else, who knows. But having a practice wetsuit helps minimize the wear and tear on your race wetsuit, but it's good to check it out before race day.
yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to admit, my last race I did was basically when my issues started happening with my urethra.
Mm,
So my bike is a mess,
yeah.
and I've cleaned it now, but so my water bottle, oh my gosh, John, it was like growing mold inside of it, like
Oh,
that.
wow. Yeah.
Because honestly, it was the last thing on my mind. I was struggling so much physically and
Yeah.
mentally, and so I was like, I went out to the garage. This is like 3 weeks ago. I was out in the garage. I'm like, oh my gosh, is there still Gatorade in that water bottle? And there was. I'm like, oh no.
Little petri dish.
And I'm like, why did I not do this? Like, I'm like, well, I know I was like really struggling,
Yeah.
but you're right. Like, that's something like
Yep.
right after like the race, you get home, like
Yep.
clean all that gunk off your
Wash it
bike,
all
and all
out.
the
Yep.
Gatorade you spilled on
Mhm.
it, and the
Mhm.
sweat, and because you know these are valuable pieces of equipment, and you're going to rely on it the next race.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. All right. The next one I have, we've actually talked about this, and we had an episode dedicated to it: relationships.
Yeah.
And to be race ready, you got to have your relationships strong and healthy, because last thing you need is a distraction, because you were ignoring your spouse or friend or, you know, kids or grandparents or parents, whatever it is, and you're on the start line and having that relationship stress on you. And so I think it really, you know, a lot of people just need to take a step back and make sure that they're making their relationships healthy.
Yeah, and honestly, like I didn't understand when my wife was doing triathlon before I was,
Mm-hmm.
and how important
Yeah,
my support to her was.
right.
'Cause, like, a lot of people probably on the podcast don't know that my wife did triathlon well before I did,
Mhm.
and like I wasn't always understanding. And it's good
Mhm.
that I went through that because now I see the other side. My wife doesn't do triathlon anymore and I do, but
Mhm.
like I see that. And I think sometimes we get so myopic
Yeah.
as triathletes and we forget like the sacrifices that our spouses or our significant others
Mhm.
or our family
Yeah.
make for us. And I know this is true that like people's relationships have been destroyed race week
Yeah.
because the especially like the big race like of the
Mhm.
year because the once again that the athlete gets so focused
Mhm.
and nothing else matters, but
Mhm.
life is going on around you.
Mhm. Yeah.
Like other people have needs around you.
Mhm.
And I think that that's important to take a step back even on race week and be like, this is just a race. This is we do this for fun.
Yeah.
It's not worth
Mhm.
losing a relationship with your kids
Yeah.
or with your family or your spouse or anything else. It's just not worth it. Like,
Uh, and I'll emphasize that a bit more and say it has to bring value to your relationships. Triathlon does. It has to bring value. If it's not bringing value to your relationships, then you really got to take a step back and say, why am I doing this? Because if it's distracting from your relationships, maybe we're just not approaching it in the right way.
great.
So I think to be race ready, you got to have strong relationships, and you got to put the work into it.
I got to be honest with you. I've hurt my wife's feelings race week by not thinking.
Oh yeah, great.
And I feel bad about it. Like,
Mhm.
and fortunately, like I've got a good, strong relationship with my wife. But even still, like I know I've done it. I did it this year.
Right, right.
You know, um, we were getting ready to go to Oceanside this year. I'll tell you a story. And we were going to carpool with somebody else. And
Mhm.
it turned out there wasn't going to be enough room for all of us
Mm.
with our dogs.
Right,
and
right,
and so my wife's like, well, I just won't go. And I'm like, no, we'll figure it out. And she's
mhm.
no, I just won't go. And she like she said that she was okay with it, but really she wasn't.
Yeah, right.
And I didn't realize it till later.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
I'm like, you know what, you were a little bit of a jerk there, and because
Yeah,
you were thinking about the race and
right.
thinking about race logistics and not thinking about the relationship. I
Mhm.
regret it. Like I do. Like I feel bad about it, but I learned, and I'm not
Mhm.
going to let that the logistics happen like that again. But it's often like, and my wife didn't want to say anything because she didn't like. She knows it's race week, and you you know
Mhm.
don't cause any friction on that side.
Right, 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 right.
But these things happen, and I like looking back now, I wish I would have took a step back and I
Mhm.
tried to do that, but sometimes you don't even
In the
recognize.
moment, yeah. Well, and I think we have to, we're always evolving and we're always learning. Like I talk about my wife and I having different race week approaches. We only learned that because we learned that when we didn't do that, we had conflict and it was not as much as not as enjoyable. But you can take a step back and say, okay, let's learn from that, let's evolve. And let's make sure that, as we go into other events that we know what to do, and so we have a plan that way. So it's not always perfect, but that's the work, is trying to evaluate and figure out, how to make things better and for the next.
One last little piece of advice on that whole relationship thing is I think that everybody should go watch an Ironman or watch a 70.3.
Oh, that's my last item.
Okay, good. I didn't know this is your point, but so you have a different perspective.
Yeah.
Like when you're out there for 112 miles on the bike and you're like, well, where were you? Why didn't I see you? Like, well, you're out there for 6 hours,
Yeah. Right. Right.
and that 1 10-second thing, like that your family wasn't there, that shouldn't cause conflict.
Yeah.
Like that's like being a spectator at a race
Mhm.
is so unbelievably stressful and
Yep.
hard.
Mhm.
And it's really, I don't know, I've evolved, right? In the beginning, like if my wife wasn't there, like, oh my gosh, especially at a big race, like that was like, it was rough. Now I'm like, I'm good either way. Like
Mhm.
see you at the finish line,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's fine. If she wants to be on the course and watch and cheer, that's great too. If not, like my training that I've done to prepare me for the race, it doesn't matter if my wife is there to cheer me or not. Like I'm going to get the same time.
Yeah.
Right. And and I understand that, like, for her to be out there for 5 hours or 6, like, by the time we start and we finish and we want to hang out afterwards, it could be like in a 70.3, it could be a 10-hour day standing outside.
Mhm. Yeah.
Right. And it's not necessarily fun. Like it'd be like you've cheered people at a race. Like it's not necessarily that fun.
Well, a lot of times the weather is not,
Yeah,
it's great for an athlete, but it may be terrible for the same weather for a spectator. Maybe it's cooler and the athlete's fine, but the person watching is not, or vice versa, or what have you. And so, yeah, I think I like, and so I still have one more, or I still have two more, but I like the idea of spectating and even being a Sherpa or some type of support crew, because you do get a totally different perspective of the event when you're trying to track someone and cheer them on and say the right things and help them. That's a different feeling than doing it yourself, and sometimes it's even more gratifying. I mean, if you're helping someone achieve their goal,
Yep.
and that's a pretty neat thing to be able to do.
Awesome. Okay, what's your next one?
All right, so I got two more, and
This kind of stole that one.
which was really we're very much related to that, but I think a better way to end. Work. You got to get work in line. And so when you go to your race, you got to make sure that part of your world can stay behind. So I'll even go so far as I shut down email, depending on the race. I may shut email down a day or 2 days before the event, so I don't get distracted with, hey, this report's due. Can you start working on it? Or, something where it starts to consume some brain power. And I think I often try to work harder, right before a race, because you're trying to get everything in order. It's always that thing. If you got a big trip planned, you're the most productive before the trip, because you're trying to get everything done before you have to fly out or what have you. And so I think, trying to get everything in line for work, so that when you're on race day and you're on that start line, that you're ready to enjoy the event.
John, we're just going to retire and then we don't have to worry about that.
I know. Well, but
it's true. It's true though. You're 100% right. Like with work, and the good thing is oftentimes we're tapering.
Yeah.
You actually find you actually have a little bit more time.
Right.
So one of the things you can do is actually, yes, dedicate a little bit more to work as you're tapering. And then the good news is that after the race, especially like an Ironman or 70.3, you're usually pretty tired and sore and stuff the next week.
Yeah.
So then you can actually think about, okay, I'm going to have extra time because I'm not really going to be doing big training volume the next week to do work as well. So great.
No, I love it. And we both have great jobs, and very much related to what we do for fun. And so, I think that's a little easier for us to still sort of manage that. But at the same time, work is work, and it is a matter of just to have a great race event, you got to have that managed, whatever that means. And that'll be different for everyone. Okay, we're almost out of time. We talked about this one, but race week plan. I think I'll just go over that and say you got to have a plan for race week, especially your big race. You got to know what you're doing. And we've actually spent a whole episode, I think, on talking about.
I think we've had several episodes on that, that exact topic. Yeah.
All right. Then last one I had, which is very much like your spectator support person advice, volunteer. Go and support a race and do something for the event that is helping others. And, whether it's swim support or pointing people in directions on, course or what have you, or handing out water. It's really a neat way to really mature as a triathlete, because you start to see the impact you have or volunteers have on race day. And what's really interesting, and we've talked about this part, which is really sort of cool, you see all different levels of athletes. You don't just see the people around you anymore. You now see the full spectrum of people doing the events. And I think it's a great way to get great respect for all levels of athletes.
Agreed. Awesome. No, I completely concur. And even just last week, I was watching the race and I was standing with kids that were in the triathlon club, but weren't racing.
Yeah.
Because they came out because they wanted to see.
That's awesome.
They want to see what a triathlon was. And the thing that amazed them that they said, that they reported to me is like, they're like, anyone can do this.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Like all shapes, all
Mhm.
sizes,
Yep.
all ages.
Mhm.
There was kids doing it. There was like senior citizens doing it.
Yeah.
There, like everybody
Yeah.
can participate
Yeah.
in triathlon, right?
Mhm.
Yes, you have to train, you have to like, but this is such an can be such an inclusive sport.
Mhm.
And having an understanding of the sport is bigger than just your little area
That's right.
is I think is really important.
Yeah, all different types of equipment, all
Yep.
different types of bikes, all, different shoe, everything. And no, and I think unfortunately, triathlon doesn't sort of embrace the diversity or advertise the diversity as much as it can. But I always tell people the same thing. I mean, you see all different types of people. It's not just the people that show up on the cover of whatever magazine or what have you. So all different people can do it.
Awesome. Well, John, we did it again. Another Friday night.
Yeah, love it. All right, so
Stuff.
that was race ready. Now I'm ready to go for a race.
You just did like you've done 2 races in the last month.
Yeah. That's the
You got
fun
one
part.
more in 2 weeks and another one in a month later.
I get to camp out a little bit on the next one too, so that'll be fun.
Oh, you're gonna camp in Tempe?
I'm going to camp outside of Tempe and then I'll drive in and then I get a hotel for the night of race. So
Awesome.
Yeah, be at least stay in town for that. So
Good. Hopefully you'll have good Wi-Fi and we can do a.
yeah, that's great. Hey, good talking.
Yeah, you too. Hey, have a great weekend and yeah, we'll see you next week.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, everyone.